Hey everyone, and welcome back to another top 10 video. Today we're going to cover Grand Admiral Thrawn. Now of course in this video I won't be able to cover everything, but here are a good amount of top 10s. If there's anything that I missed, list it in the comments below and I'll be sure to make a part 2 for Grand Admiral Thrawn. So let's start with number 1. Thrawn launched the expanded universe. Grand Admiral Thrawn was inspired by key historical and fictional figures like Sherlock Holmes and Alexander the Great. In Timothy Zahn's original trilogy of Thrawn books, which launched the old expanded universe, beginning with Heir to the Empire, the Chiss military genius was charged with the onerous task of keeping the Empire together after the death of the Emperor and the destruction of the second Death Star. The only non-human to ever be given the rank of Grand Admiral, he hailed from the Chiss ascendancy in the unknown region. Now, unlike Vader, Thrawn didn't use brutality and fear to keep his crew in line. Instead, the Grand Admiral inspired his underlings with his leadership and vision, and only rarely resorted to violence to maintain discipline. He proved quite the impediment for our heroes, outwitting them at effectively every turn and almost succeeding in restoring the Empire, but was defeated at the very last moment by Rogue Squad. Now, if we're to compare him to Star Trek, which I know is blasphemy here, but if we were to do that, I would say he's somewhat like Spock. He's like a Vulcan, or maybe even like a Borg Vulcan. Number 2. Thrawn was the first EU character to be reintroduced to the new canon. When Disney decided to discard the entire expanded universe in favor of their new stuff, decades of stories and characters went with it, including Grand Admiral Thrawn. However, as the Chiss genius was one of the most popular characters that came out of the expanded universe, it was only a matter of time before he would make his appearance again, and so he did, with Season 3 on the Rebels animated series proving again to be a worthy adversary for the crew of the Ghost. With his introduction into the show, Thrawn became the first expanded universe character to be reinserted into the new Disney canon. Number 3. Thrawn tricked his way into the Empire. When the Empire discovered Thrawn, it appears that he has been exiled from the Chiss ascendancy and can never return to his home world of Cilia. But this is just one of many of the Grand Admiral's deceptions, as the exile was a ruse to get the attention of the Emperor. Though Chiss base was in the unknown regions, they had done reconnaissance on the core galactic worlds. Thrawn himself had even met members of the Republic during the Clone Wars, including Anakin Skywalker. Now, the Chiss ascendancy became curious about Palpatine once he rose to power and became the Emperor. They sent Thrawn to assess what the new state of the galaxy was and if the Empire was friend or foe. As Thrawn already had knowledge of the core world's ways and would not risk exposing the extent of the Chiss ascendancy's power, he had been the logical candidate to send. The ruse of the exile would be the excuse he needed to join the Empire. Number 4. Meeting the Emperor. Thrawn offered his knowledge of the unknown regions to Emperor Palpatine when the two had their first meeting. If he was allowed to join the Empire, he could help the Sovereign deal with any potential threats that could challenge the Empire from that part of the galaxy. But the Dark Lord wasn't quite convinced, until the Chiss revealed how he had once worked with his servant, Anakin. Though the Emperor told him that the Jedi was dead, he allowed Thrawn into the Imperial Navy. Number 5. Stranger in a strange land. As he was a foreigner in a foreign land or galaxy, a human named Eli Vanto was assigned to Thrawn as the Chiss liaison officer, to aid him in understanding Imperial culture and to help as his translator. Vanto, who was a simple supply officer, had come from a backwaters planet called Lysatra and didn't actually speak Thrawn's language, but he was familiar with another alien species' tongue, which Thrawn knew too. So they were able to communicate through using that. Vanto's mathematical aptitude and Thrawn's artistic sensibilities complemented each other, and the two became quick friends. Number 6. Coruscant was introduced with Thrawn. Heir to the Empire, the first part of Timothy Zahn's Thrawn trilogy of books, first hit shelves back in 1991. 8 years after Return of the Jedi left theaters, but 6 years before the release of the special editions. So basically, Grand Admiral Thrawn made his debut just as Star Wars was at a dead spot, with waning interest in the franchise from the public. Though some credit the books with reigniting George Lucas's interest for making the prequels again, whether that's true or not is unclear, but the Star Wars creator certainly did read the books, as became evident when he released the special editions. The citywide capital world of the Empire, Coruscant, was never seen. nor named in the initial release of the first 3 Star Wars films. It was first later in the special edition of Episode 6 that the Industrial Planet made its theatrical launch. However, it was in Timothy Zahn's book that Coruscant was actually introduced for the first time. Zahn even came up with the name. It was only after the release of the books that George Lucas adopted the planet for scenes he inserted into Return of the Jedi, after the destruction of the second Death Star. Number 7. Rise of the Grand Admiral. Once he had joined the Empire, it was only a matter of time for Thrawn to use his superior military mind to rocket through their Imperial ranks. His cold, calculating observations and callous efficiency were exactly the trait the Empire wanted in their Imperial officers. But on the first mission that he carried out as an Imperial, as a weapons officer, his unorthodox thinking and creative problem-solving actually threatened to get him court-martialed. However, Thrawn was excellent at thinking and talking his way out of difficult situations, and eventually was able to maneuver events so he could remain in the Empire. It did not take him long from there to eventually work his way up to the rank of Grand Admiral. Number 8. Rogue One star's brother gives voice to Thrawn. In Rogue One, the protagonist Jyn Erso's father, Galen Erso, the man who engineered the super laser on the Death Star, was played by Danish actor Mads Mikkelsen, who has appeared in numerous roles for film and television, including Doctor Strange and the character in the Hannibal TV series. However, it turns out he's not the only Mikkelsen involved in Star Wars. His brother, Lars Mikkelsen, who has also had a stellar career in front of the camera, lended his voice to Grand Admiral Thrawn in Rebels. Number 9. Thrawn vs. the Ghost. Imperial Governor Arinda Pryce brought the Grand Admiral to the Lothal system to help her crush resistance to Imperial rule before it sparked off a rebellion. The main operatives of this resistance was the crew of the Ghost. Thrawn, who studied art to get insight into either an entire race's culture or to understand the thinking patterns of just a singular individual, analyzed the work of the Mandalorian, Sabine Wren. She was a member of the Ghost and quite the artist in her free time when she wasn't shooting at stormtroopers. Though he was able to learn a lot about the rebel crew from examining her work, and his mind proved to be unlike any rebel crew he had dealt with before, Thrawn was finally defeated, but not destroyed. What the Chiss could not calculate for was the unpredictability of the Force, and in a crazy adventure involving hyperspace traveling space whales called Purgils, Thrawn, along with the Chimeria, his flagship, were carried off to some mysterious location along with the Jedi Padawan Ezra Bridger. Both the Rebels' and Imperial's fate remains unknown. Number 10. Thrawn and the First Order. Thrawn was from the Unknown Regions, which was a section of the galaxy that had been mapped, but largely not really explored, located beyond the Outer Rim. Even so, for the Emperor, it still means that Thrawn had potential access to knowledge of the galaxy that neither the Empire nor the Sith had. The Dark Lord was interested in another section of the galaxy beyond the Outer Rim, called Wild Space. Unlike the Unknown Regions, Wild Space was completely uncharted, so the Emperor and Thrawn began to map it together. These mapped routes that their work provided was what the Imperial elites later used after the Empire's final defeat against the New Republic at the Battle of Jakku to take their remaining forces into Wild Space. There, the Imperial remnant morphed into the First Order and struck back at the New Republic years later, giving us the sequels. Hope you guys enjoyed this top 10 on Thrawn. I'd love to do another top 10 for him because I know he's just such a diverse and vast character with so much information behind him that there's tons of top 10s to do for him. So let me know down in the comments what are your some favorite Thrawn moments, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Until then, remember, the Force will be with you always.